Good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Hockaday, and on behalf of all the staff of Sandhills Broadcasting, I welcome you to the candidate interviews on WFJA, WWGP, and The Rant. We are excited about the 4 major local races that we will preview over the next week and give you, the listener, the opportunity to hear from and see your candidates for the upcoming election. We will begin each day at 12:30, and our format will feature the State House race tomorrow, the Lee County Commissioners on Wednesday and Thursday, and the Lee County Board of Education on Monday the 12th. Today we bring you the candidates for State Senate District 12, Jim Burgin and John Kirkman. We now take you to our candidates and today's interviewer, Jan Hayes.
Good afternoon, and welcome to day 1 of our local candidate interviews, brought to you live by Sandhills Broadcasting, WFJA and WWGP, and The Rant. We are here in the studio of WFJA. I'm Jan Hayes, and your host for today's interviews. Before we start with our first interview, I remind you that you can listen in to our interviews today on WFJA 105.5 FM, WWGP 1050 AM, and 95.1 FM. These interviews are also video streaming live on the WFJA Facebook page, as well as the Facebook page for The Rant. Today, we will talk with the 2 candidates running for North Carolina Senate District 12. This district covers parts of Lee and Harnett counties. The 2 candidates are incumbent Republican Jim Burgin of Lillington and Democratic candidate John Kirkman of Sanford. We will start today's session with the incumbent Republican, Jim Burgin. Jim, welcome to WFJA and our candidate interviews.
Thank you, Jan. It's a pleasure to be here, and I want to thank the folks at WFJA, WWGP, and The Rant for sponsoring this. And, of course, it's always a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you, and certainly always good to see you and be with you, Jim. Jim, please tell those that have tuned in today about yourself, your background, and why you are seeking re-election to the North Carolina Senate.
Thank you, Jan. First of all, it's been an honor to serve the people of Lee, Harnett, and part of Johnston County for the last 2 years, and I have thoroughly enjoyed my time in Raleigh, and I've learned a lot, and I hope I contributed to a lot of different things. I think we're going to talk about some of those today. I tell folks that I'm a Christian, I'm a conservative, I'm a businessman, and someone that thinks that we need to practice civility and statesmanship in all of our politics. As a Christian, I sincerely believe that that's so important, that people see our Christian values in what we do and say. Grew up in Knoxville, Tennessee, went to the University of Tennessee. I've lived in North Carolina for 35 years, married a beautiful young lady, Ann, from Anger, North Carolina. We met in Greensboro when I went right out of college. I went to work for a $1 billion company, worked for them for 8 years, moved Ann all over the country. And when our oldest daughter was 18 months old, I said, I was already traveling 4 days a week, and I said, I want to be home more. So bought an insurance agency in Anger, North Carolina, and then got involved in the car businesses and other businesses. And as I said, I'm a business guy. I love everything about business. But Ann and I've been married for 40 years. We have 3 millennials. I have 4 grandchildren now. The youngest just turned 3 months last week. And I have had a blessed life. I have just thoroughly enjoyed North Carolina, being part of North Carolina. I've been in business. I've been president of multiple chambers, president of PTGs, coached baseball, served as county commissioner for 8 years, 3 of those as chairman, and then now just finishing up my first term in the North Carolina Senate.
Thank you, Jim. And Jim, you and I served together on the Central Carolina Carolina Community College Board of Trustees. So it's been a pleasure to serve with Jim and get to know you during our tenure together on the board.
And I would like to talk a minute about Central Carolina Community College. I'm honored to serve as vice chair and chairman of the finance committee, and we have one of the finest community college systems in the whole country, and I would put Central Carolina up against any of the other community college. Fantastic board, wonderful president, and we're doing some really good things for people in our 3 counties.
Thank you, and I could not agree more with that. Moving on, Jim, and this next is really a series of questions regarding the COVID-19 pandemic. It's brought a huge challenge to North Carolina, one that our legislators have never dealt with. With regard to the economy, how do you rate the job of our legislature in dealing with the pandemic thus far?
Anytime you deal with as many different things that are going on, not only health issues, economic issues, social issues, mental health issues, it's a big concern for everyone. Now, as a legislature, I think we've done some really good things. There's some things that I think that looking back, we would have done different and maybe done a little better. But overall, I would give us, hate to, an A minus, maybe a B plus. I think a lot of people look at it and say, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. But what I've learned from being up there is you look at so much information that a lot of people don't have access to, and then you try to make the decisions. One of my big concerns right now is we're going to be about $4.5 billion short over the next budget cycle. And we didn't have a budget. The governor and the House and Senate could never come to terms with each other, so we never had a budget for this 2-year cycle. So we're going to be starting on the new budget cycle in January. I hope to be a big part of that. We're going to have a lot of opportunities to discover new and inventive ways to deal with problems because money is going to be an issue this year, Jan.
Thank you, Jim. Back to, again, specifically COVID-19, what are you hearing from constituents and businesses in this area about the state's response to COVID-19?
Here again, the uncertainty, this isn't like it was a flood or it was a fire or something where everybody kind of knew what to do. The goal line has been moving the whole time. So nobody quite knew about what to do and when to do it because nobody knew how severe it was going to be. Looking back, I think we should have never stopped school for the younger children. 60% of all the daycares have stayed open during this whole thing, and we've had 85 cases of COVID, and a lot of those were the workers. So we know now that it doesn't affect the younger children, so we should have kept schools open. Some of the other things, I think shutting down the economy in the rural counties without having all the data really caused the problem to be magnified at first. I know, as I said, people were scared. People still are scared. I get calls every week from people saying, what do we need to do? How do we need to do it? But I'm one of those, I tell folks all the time, I am careful but unafraid. I wash my hands. If I go somewhere and they require a mask, I wear a mask. When I'm outside, I don't. In my offices, we don't. We have people tested. We try to practice good hygiene all the time. But we don't need to live in fear. That's not who we are as Lee County folks and as Americans. I'm just not going to live in fear. I'm going to face this. And I encourage all of my older friends and clients that have health conditions, underlying health conditions, especially if you have diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, and you're over 65 or 70 years old, you need to be extra careful. You need to wear a mask. You need to do all those things. The younger you are and the healthier you are, I think the less issues you're going to have with that.
So I think there are already some lessons learned going forward in addition to what we've got to do. Thank you. As a Senate member, how can you help during a time like this COVID-19 period? And how can you support your communities?
One of the things that I've been, I'm on the healthcare and healthcare appropriations committees, and being in the insurance business, and I've been in the healthcare business for 31 years now as far as selling health insurance. Served on the hospital board for 15 years, and we had mental health. One of my biggest concerns is what's happening with mental health during this time. I helped get $70 million of the COVID money designated for mental health. And the reason I did that is all of these groups that normally meet were not meeting. People that were going to different treatments were not going. People were not taking their medication regularly. People weren't visiting. The relationships are so important to keep people grounded, and they weren't doing that. People were going into isolation, and stress has had a huge impact. I talk to folks every day that say they're not sleeping well. They're suffering from COVID fatigue, and we've got to get over that. So one of the things I do, Jan, is I talk to people about prayer. I think that we as Christians need to encourage everybody to pray. And I know y'all can't see it on the radio, but I had a bunch of bands made, orange bands, and they say pray first. And I give them away all the time. And I talk to people about it, about that don't sit and worry, start praying. We need to pray for each other. We need to pray for our country. We need to pray for all of our elected officials, pray for our kids, and especially our teachers. You know, the teachers, I met with 4 teachers the other night, Jan, and I was just asking them, tell me what all is going on, because Harnett County Schools went back on the 28th. They actually went back to in right. class. And so I saw these 4 teachers, and I said, tell me how you all are doing. And they said, we love being back with our kids, but the problem is we're teaching 2 different groups. We're teaching our in-class, and we're teaching our online. And she said, you know, we can touch and help our in-class. We can't do that with the online. And they're real worried about that separation. So I hope we get all of our kids back in school as quick as we can.
Thank you. Looking forward, and you've touched on this in a previous answer, how could North Carolina be better prepared for another pandemic?
Well, I'm going to start praying that we don't ever have another pandemic, but I think it's naturally going to happen. I think there's so much money, I mean billions and billions of dollars put into research. Jan, last week I was on the phone with the top 4 virus specialists with Duke University. I'm on a regular call with them, and we've given them $17 million to not only do research but to work on a vaccine. And they bought probably every available research monkey available and all these different things. And they told me a couple of things last week. Is they expect by the first of the year to have a test, a rapid test that'll cost less than $5 a test. Right now the tests run from $100 to $125. That's going to be a good thing. They're also experimenting with some vaccines, and they said that there's going to be some vaccines available after the first of the year, probably between the first of the year and the middle of the year. But they say, kind of like the flu, they're only going to be 40 to 50% effective. So I think what you're going to see is a lot more research, a lot more planning, a lot more focus on what's next, and trying to go out into the world and see what's out there that we need to be ready for. Here again, we don't need to put our heads in the sand and say it won't happen again. I think we need to be careful but unafraid and start really watching for what could happen next.
Good, thank you. What specifically can the state do to help rebuild North Carolina's economy post-COVID-19?
We need to get our economy back open, and we need to do it safely. The governor has moved to send us, I call it Phase 3 light, where certain things can open and certain things can't. I still, and I've talked to the governor many times, but I still disagree with the way we did some of the closures. How is it that we could have all of the big box stores, the grocery stores, the Home Depots, Walmarts, and all of that open and function, and then you have a mom and pop store right down the street that can't function? I think people need great information. They need to have the necessary tools, but at the same time, as an American, I think my freedom is very important to me, and and there's decisions that I need to make and be responsible for and accountable for. We do not need to be a nanny state. And so I think that we need to get our economy back open, need to get people back to work. The best thing we can do for a person, especially a person in poverty, is to get them a good job, and you can't do that with your economy closed down.
Thank you. Well, moving on, as you know, Jim, every decade after the census, our political maps are redrawn so that the population is represented in a fair manner. What are your thoughts on how those maps should be redrawn and who should handle this? Should it be legislators or an independent, nonpartisan commission?
That question comes up every time there's a change in who's in control. If one side's in control, they say, well, we think it ought to be this. If they're out of control, then they think it ought to be that. I have a problem with changing things like the Constitution and rules, but I do think there's a fair way to do it. And we did it with the redistricting this past time, where we had to go in and redistrict special areas. Mine was one of the ones that got redistricted in this last round last summer. And we did it very open and transparent. All the maps were put on. They were put up live. People could go in and look at them. People could come in and ask questions. I think that's the way to do it. Transparency, people seeing the process you go through leads to more open, honest, fair, and I think reasonable ways to do it. What is not partisan? You say that we're going to have a nonpartisan committee do it, but all of us. I'll tell you a real funny story, Jan. I just finished taking an unconscious bias course. I heard that DOT was requiring all their employees to take an unconscious bias course. And so I asked to take it. Well, I thought it would just be a matter they'd send it to me. Well, they had to send somebody down from Raleigh with their computer for me to take this course on. It was a 14 program course. It took 2.5 hours or so to take it. And what I learned from it is I don't care what it is in life, all of us are biased about something. I asked one of the people, I said, do you like Coke or Pepsi? Well, one liked Coke. I said, well, you're biased then. I mean, biased in and of its nature does not mean that you're a bad person or that you're a racist or anything else. All of us bring bias, but a lot of it's because of not only our upbringing, our religious beliefs, our friendships, and all of that. And I think too often we're too quick to look for reasons to be divisive rather than to look for ways to have common ground with each other.
Thank you. Jim, other than COVID-19, what do you view as the most pressing issues coming up next term in the Senate? And what would you do to make sure the voters' voices are heard?
I think the budget is going to be huge. There's going to have to be cuts that people are not going to like. There's going to be things that we have paid for and been able to do across the state, locally, in the municipalities, counties and municipalities, that we're going to have to say we can't do that. I think there's fair ways to do it. I think by talking to people, bringing folks together, is going to be terribly important. And here again, I think not attacking each other, but attacking ideas and problems, and to make them into opportunities. Some things I think that have changed the way we are doing things is here again, I was on the phone with a bunch of the healthcare folks the other day, and telemedicine. Telemedicine had been kind of something that we were on the edge of. Now you're going to see everybody's going to stay with telemedicine. Blue Cross right now is paying telemedicine just like they pay the providers for a regular visit. I don't know if they can sustain that. I think that a telephone visit ought to pay less than an in-person visit. I just think that that's a business concept, is you don't pay for something if you don't use all the same resources. But you're going to see telemedicine here to stay, both telepsychiatry and teleprimary care. Specialist care, I don't think it's going to work as well, but I think primary care, you can hold your iPhone up and your Android device and show somebody a rash and say, doctor, what do I need to do about this? It's hard for somebody to say, I'm hurting here, and then a doctor needs to touch your body and run scans and do all of that. But a lot of the primary care, a lot of the other care can be handled. And as I mentioned earlier, one of my biggest healthcare concerns and something that I'm just passionate about and I'm going to stay focused on it my whole career in the Senate is mental health care. I think we as a state can do a much better job. Jan, I've visited all 3 of our mental health hospitals and dozens of mental health and opioid treatment centers, and some of them do great, some of them not so great, but it costs right now $1,400 a day to keep somebody in one of our mental health facilities. So I want to figure out a way to get people back in their communities, back in their homes, to where they're functioning and can live out a fulfilled life.
Thank you. Moving on, sickness and death, unfortunately, has been one of the results of COVID-19. Many more have been affected financially, losing jobs or reductions in hours. Many losing long-time businesses and lifelong investments and dreams. Does the state have a role in helping those affected? And if so, how should the state help?
It's estimated that 60% of all the businesses that have closed during this time will never reopen. A lot of restaurants will never reopen. I've got clients that said that they'll never reopen their business. And that affects a lot of folks. You know, the majority of people that work in North Carolina work for small businesses. And you know, everything that hurts a small business, especially in a county like Lee County and Harnett and Johnston, our rural counties thrive on small businesses. And you know, we don't have the major, well, Lee County probably and Johnston more than Harnett have a lot of the major big employers that are coming and are investing. But people losing their jobs has been traumatic, and I've talked to I don't even have an idea how many people I've talked to about unemployment. You know, we had a fiasco with unemployment right at first, and getting people on unemployment, getting their checks to them. There's still folks that have not received a penny in unemployment since this started, and we've got to develop and get some of these programs. But one of the problems is the state. Some of the technology the state has is antiquated. They still use DOS programs in a lot of the departments. I know I was over at DMV, and I walked in and I saw the green letters on the screen with the big, you know, old-timey monitors, and I said, "What in the world are you running a DOS program for?" And they said, "Well, that's what we're still using." We have got to get the state up and running, more modern, more invested, paperless. The state's not paperless. My businesses, we've been paperless for 14 or 15 years. There's just a lot of things that I think us business guys need to say, state, we've got to change this. We need to give great customer service, and we can't do it with antiquated equipment and devices and programs.
Thank you. For those of you just tuning in, you're listening to live candidate interviews for the North Carolina State Senate District 12. We are with Republican Jim Burgin. Jim, we'll move on to our next question. Over 1 million North Carolinians under the age of 65 have no health insurance. Should state government be concerned about this? And if so, what should be done to make sure everyone has access to health care?
Jan, I've been looking at this for years as far as how to make sure that people have treatment and can have access to health care. And the state's done a lot of things, and we in the House and Senate have done a lot of things to do it. We'll share a couple of things. We passed a law last year, and what it says is that groups can go together. Association health plans is what it's called. But that groups can go together and form large groups to provide health care at a much lower rate. And I'm thinking of people like folks that work at restaurants. All the restaurants could go together and have one plan. Or you could have people like realtors. Realtors right now are 1099 employees to the most case, so they would have to buy their own insurance. Under our plan, and then all of those folks could come together and do it. The fact that the governor did not veto that bill, and he actually called me the day that the bill became law, he called me probably about 15, 20 minutes after I got a call that it had become law, and he didn't sign it, but he didn't veto it. And he called me and he said that he said, I didn't sign it, but I didn't veto it. And he said, I really don't think it's that good a bill. But he said, I know you all worked real hard on it. And I told him that day. I said, Governor, this will pick up 200,000 people that are unemployed right now. And I said, I think it's a great start in getting some stuff done so people can buy affordable health care. A lot of people have been talking about wanting to expand Medicaid. And if you dig into the numbers, it scares me. I'm one of those. I think you help people find a great job, help them, give them access to health care, try to get it as inexpensive as can. But sometimes, I'll give you an example of affordable health care. I'm licensed to sell affordable health care. But if you sell somebody something, but the deductible is so high they can't use it, I mean, the deductible on affordable health care is like $13,600. So if you give something to someone that really they still can't use because they don't have the money to pay the deductibles, what have you really done? I want to do more about rural health, especially in Tier 1 and Tier 2 counties. Lee County's a Tier 2 county. Harnett County's a Tier 2 county. I want to make sure that our hospitals stay open, that we have clinics, free clinics, that people can go to. Too many people end up in the emergency room when they don't need to be there. They need to be at a primary care, or they need to be at a urgent care. They don't need to be going straight to an emergency room. That's some of the most expensive care, and that's one of the reasons that health care is costing so much right now. So we're going to be looking at a lot of different things. I'm committed to get back. This week I'm on the phone with folks from some of the hospital groups. Last week I was on the phone with the PAs. I'm meeting with optometrist group this week. Last week I was on the phone with internal medicine docs, and I've asked them all the same thing. You tell us the best way to provide care to people at the best method, the best way to do it, and the most economical way to do it. So if anybody's got any great ideas, contact me. You can get my cell phone number right off of my website. Call me. I'd love to hear your ideas.
Good. Thank you. Sounds like you're doing your homework on that. We'll move on. I think we've got time for one more question. The General Assembly recently approved an incentive package to bring a United States Golf Association office and other investments to Pinehurst. Not discussing this package specifically, of course, but what is your opinion on using tax dollars for incentive packages offered from the state or local governments to bring industry and or development to our area?
In a perfect world, we would not do it. But we don't live in a perfect world, and we are constantly in competition with other states, other counties in the state to do these things. Sometimes I think the counties and state get played in this, and sometimes I think they're taken advantage of. I think there's a better way to approach it. I'll give you an example, Jan. When I was chairman of the Harnett County Commissioners, Rooms to Go approached us. They wanted to go down on 95 in Harnett County to build a distribution facility. It would be the largest one on the East Coast. They would be covering multiple states, up to 365 miles. It was going to generate about 600 to 800 jobs, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in new taxes. The state did some things for them that we weren't a party to in the county. But they came to the county and the state and everybody else and said, what can the county do? So what we did is we gave them basically a refund on a portion of their property tax. I'll never forget, right after we were working on it, and we made it all public, and because everybody needed to know what we were doing. And a gentleman stood up at one of the meetings, and he said, "Mr. Chairman," he said, I resent you giving away my tax dollars." And I said, "Well, now let me explain how this worked. After they pay their tax, their property tax, we're going to give them a portion back, but we're still making over $150,000 a year in additional revenue that we would not have made had they not come." And he said, "Well, I didn't know that." He said, "So we netted $150,000. I said, "Yes, sir. We made an additional $150,000. So I said, sometimes they are necessary.
Thank you, Jim. And we're going to have to wrap this up today, but thank you so much. I'd like to join Sandhills Broadcasting and the rant in thanking Republican Senator Jim Burgin for his time today. We're going to take a short 2-minute break, and when we return, we'll talk with Democratic candidate for State Senate John Kirkman. So stay with us. We'll be right back after these messages.